say we wanted to have multiple tables in one interface. First of all, is that even possible? Well, sure, why not? We can have multiple tables. We just have to make sure that we are basically setting them up similar to how we set up our initial table. And we might have to throw in some additional logic as well in our override func table method here. So let's go ahead and let's just jump right in here. So first of all, you know what, my add and remove buttons, I'm going to clear those out to make room for our second table. I think we've gotten some pretty good use out of those. So I'm going to erase those, get rid of that code here. All right. And now, let's see. Well, I'm going to be adding in another table. So I'm going to make these a bit closer together here. So kind of keep all my logic together in terms of where the code is situated anyway. And yeah, we'll kind of make a bit of room here so that our code doesn't take up too much space. Okay, we'll keep our change color and all those things going. So let's go ahead and let's add in another table object here. Okay, so bring it in. And setting this table up is exactly like setting up the previous table. Right, we can set a background color, for example. In fact, let's do that. Let's go with kind of a gray color here. Spacing, yeah, let's do some custom spacing here just to see what happens. And then if I pop out the side panel over here, you can see that it sets it up the same as it did previously. Let's give an identifier here to our row controller. So this one will be my third row controller. Right, not super descriptive, but hey, it's descriptive enough for our purposes here. All right, so in our group, let's go ahead and let's add in, what should we add in? Well, we can add in a label. And we can also add in something else. So we'll change our group layout to be, let's see, horizontal. Yeah, horizontal's okay. You kind of want them next to each other. And what else can we put in here? We can put, let's see, we can put a timer. So we'll put that next to it there. This one, let's position it, let's see, position right. Okay, and this label will just kind of default to go left. Okay, cool. Now, we're not done yet. Let's add in a class to take care of this third row controller. So we'll do that here, and we'll go to our files, and I'm just going to kind of right click, new file, right? And just like we did before, watchKit class, it's going to be an NS object, and we'll call this my third controller class. Right, not super imaginative, but it'll work. Okay, we'll just save it in the same root as everything else. Bring it up here. All right, so there is our my third controller class .swift. Let's go back to our storyboard, and we'll grab our controller here. We'll go to the inspector panel here, and we will make sure that we give it that class that we just created. My third controller class. Great, so now we have created that association. And another thing we have to remember to do is add outlets here in the class so that we can control them on our interface code. All right, so here, man, there's always a lot of panels going on. So let's go to my third controller class .swift. Okay, we'll grab the label, bring it in. This one will be my third, what's a good name? Well, let's just call it my label. Okay, and we'll grab the timer as well. Put it right down below. Okay, my timer. Okay, so now we have those outlets. Neat. Okay, so now it's all connected. Let's go ahead and let's go back to the interface controller.swift. Okay, and now we can kind of initialize it basically just like we did before. So we can say my third, oh yeah, we have to connect that as well. So we'll grab that table, we'll put it up with our other outlet, control click, bring it over, my second table. Okay, and you know what, I'm going to add a mark here, mark outlets and vars. Okay, so now let's get to setting that up. My second table dot, let's see, what do we want to do? Let's set the row types. And the row types, well, we really only have the one, but it's going to be a string, my third row controller. Okay, and this should be all we need initially to at least see our table. Okay, so let's run it in the simulator. Let's cross our fingers, hope it doesn't crash. And if it doesn't crash, hey, that's always a good start, in my opinion. Okay, here it goes. Okay, so it didn't crash, and we have our label, right? And we just placed it directly underneath. That's why it's underneath the initial table. So, I mean, if you ever needed to have kind of multiple complex tables, you can just put them right next to each other. And basically, they look like they belong in the same table, unless you start playing around with the spacing. But okay, so now we have our table there. Let's go ahead and let's add some behavior for it. So in the interest of keeping our constants sort of descriptive, second table row equals my second table dot row controller at, we only have one, so it's going to be index 0. Okay, and don't forget to do one of these guys, my third controller class. Okay, let's try something. So let's say second table row. Yeah, second table row dot my label. Right, we haven't set a listener on this yet, or an observer, so we can say set text. Text will be a string, so we'll say hi there. Okay, and let's also do second table row dot my timer. My timer dot, let's see, let's just start the timer. Start updating the timer. And let's see if this causes a crash or not. No crashes is good. Crashes are also okay. It's a good way to learn, right? But I also like not crashing. Okay, there it goes. And no crash. And hey, looks like it's working. And we made it selectable so I can tap it. It's not going to do anything, but you can tap it. This we can still tap as well. So that still has the same functionality. All right, great. Now, what if we want to do something else interesting? So what if we wanted, so let's say we load up the table and we want the background color to be sort of a random color or a pseudo-random color. How can we do that? Well, not too hard actually. So let's declare a constant up here with some colors in it. So we can say let colors equal, and in here we will have, let's see, we can put in a dictionary here. So it's going to have an integer, and it's also going to have a UI color, for example. So key value pair. So this will be the key, right? And this will be the value. Pretty straightforward stuff if you are used to using dictionaries here. So we can say something like this. 1 will be UI color dot green, or dot gray, sure. 2 UI color dot orange, and I'm just kind of coming up with sort of whatever colors are available here. UI color dot green. 4 UI color dot, let's see if they have purple. UI color, oops, should not be dot, it should be this. UI color dot purple. Okay, and we'll do a couple more here. UI color dot, sure, go with, you know what, I like cyan. We'll do one more here. UI color dot, let's see here. Yeah, let's go with dark gray. All right, you know what, no, we already have gray. Let's go with brown. Okay, so now we have our dictionary. So how can we kind of loop through this randomly, grab whatever we need, and then display it? So we're going to want to do, let's do it here below where we initialize the table. So we'll say let random num equal arc4 random uniform. And what this does, it lets us basically get a number between 0 and whatever upper bound we give it. We could also do arc4 random, but that would give us basically a number between 0 and some, 2 to the power of 32 bit number. So we get random uniform. This basically generates a pseudo-random number for us. And what's our upper bound? What upper bound do we want? Well, what we can give it is we can count however many elements here are in our colors dictionary. So we can say colors dot count. Okay, so this will count the colors, and doesn't like this for some reason. Yes, we have to give it a uint32 type of integer. Right, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this should give us a number between 0 and 6. So because we're going to be using this to kind of go through the index, right? So index is because there's 0-based index, let's do -1 here. Because we want to get a number between 0 and 5 rather than 0 and 6. So we'll say colors.count -1. Okay, and now we can kind of loop through. So random color equals. And what we can do is we can take the values for this dictionary and we can kind of loop through using using our random number, which will be one of the indexes. So if we take the values and put them into an array, that will allow us to do that. So for example, we say array. Okay, transform it into array, and we can say, let's see here, colors dot values at any given random num. Okay, and it's unhappy, I think, because we can't associate uint32 with this type of array. So what we can do is we can convert that into an integer. So a lot of hoops to jump through here, but this is something we have to do a lot of the time when we're using Swift, right? Okay, so basically we get a random number that's of type uint32, then we transform that into an integer, then we transform our colors.values into an array, and we select whatever value here, because this will go in and select the index. Okay, so we have our way of generating our random color. Let's go ahead and let's hook up our group into our my third controller class. Okay, so we'll grab the group, bring it in over here. We'll say my group. Seems as good a name as any. Okay, so now we can manipulate the group, and we'll go back to my interface controller, pop this guy back over, and zoom this back in. Okay, so you know what, I can even put these somewhere else. So I'll put those up above. Okay, and now we can say, let's see, second table row dot my group dot set background color random color. Okay, let's see if that will work. So we'll run it, it's going to compile, build succeeded, great. And hopefully it'll work. Okay, loading it up. No crashes. Okay, it looks like it set it to a background color that is cyan, so one of the ones we selected. That's pretty cool. Let's see what happens if we relaunch it here. Build succeeded. Okay. Let's see if it is cyan again. It is. Weird. Coincidence? Perhaps. Uh, Okay, there we go. Yeah, so now it's light gray instead. Cool. So now we're setting random colors, and you can imagine how this could be useful if you wanted to, say, set each of your rows a different color. You would just kind of use similar logic. So if we did want to do that, for example, well, let's do it. So we will say, let's see, let's put a couple rows in. So we'll do set row types. We'll do, I don't know, 3 different rows. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and instead of set background color, just setting it to random color, we can do something a little different. So we can just get it to call that for every row there is. Okay, so wait for this to load up. Weird. Yes, because we did put an initial color on it. That's why, when we initially set it up. Now, if we want to show a random color for each row, we can do that. Because the way we have it set up now, well, we're only coloring one column, first of all, or one row rather. And they're all going to be the same color, just in the way that we've set it up here. So let's rearrange how we do that here. So we're still going to set 3 row types, and we'll just do a simple for loop here. So we're going to range over 0, ... 2, because this we're going to range over the index basically. And of course, index is 0 base, so this is going to be index 0, 1, and then 2. So for each of these, we will basically adapt some of our code here, grab this, put it up here, fix some of our spacing here. Okay, and instead of at 0, we will just kind of loop through. So for each index, they're all going to be my third controller class. And you know what? We'll also grab this, cut and paste. Random color, we'll do the same. Okay, and let's try this. So for now, what this is going to do, they're all going to be the same color, but at least we'll be coloring them all here. And then we'll just kind of move our random color and random num function into our for loop. Okay, so wait for that to load up. There it goes. Yeah, so they're all the same brown color, and we have a background color on our table already, and we adjusted the spacing if you recall, so that's why there's space in between. So now to kind of just do this every time we run the for loop, well, we'll just move this, cut, and let's see, where should we put it? Well, I guess it doesn't matter, but I'll just put it right here. Forgot my L. Okay, so second table row, let random color. Okay, this way every time it's going to kind of loop through and should do a different color for each. And that's going to be pretty neato. Okay, build succeeded. And here it goes. All right, so orange, cyan, and this one just happened to be orange again. And, you know, the more colors you have, the more chances you'll get a specific color. Also, you could do kind of in a theme. So if you want just kind of to focus on grays, you could do UI color.gray, UI color.dark gray, whatever, teal, for example. And you just have to customize it in that way. All right, but we have a pseudo-random function going, which is cool. Instead of the way we have it set up now, we want to kind of swap between 2 different colors. So one row will be one color, and the next will be another, and then we'll kind of alternate between the 2. And that's actually very simple to do. So I'm going to do it in probably the most simple way here. And instead of let colors, I will make a constant here, let colors switch, I suppose. Okay, and it's going to be an array of UI colors. And you know what, it turns out I didn't really need to do this as a dictionary up there. So now that I understand that, I can just say UI color dot gray, and the other alternating color will be UI color dot dark gray. Okay, and then we can keep track of a variable here to see whether the switch has been triggered or not. Let's see. Switched sounds good to me, and it's just going to have a type bool. We will default it to false, right? Like we've done a couple times before up to this point. And so now I am going to, let's see, get rid of some of this code. Okay, so I'll keep the top line, but these two, so random number generator, we don't really need. And instead, we will just kind of add an if statement here. So if switched, we will do second table row dot my group dot set background color, and we are going to just grab the first one here. So color switch at index 0, which will be gray. Okay, and then we can say else second table row dot my group dot set background color switch position 1. And we also want to make sure we're swapping here. Switched equals false in this case, and here switched equals true. Okay, and we will move our set text right up above here because, you know what, we don't care if they have different text. We'll set them all to the same text. Move this up here. And let's see, what's the issue here? We made it a let when we should have made it a variable. Makes sense. Okay, so this should switch back and forth between the two colors. And to demonstrate that, let's put in 4 rows or more so we can kind of see that. So we'll do my second table dot, let's see, insert rows at index set. We'll do 0 dot dot less than 5, or less than, yeah, 5. So this should insert 4 with row my, what's the row type? My third row controller. Right, a little bit more efficient there. And then we'll make sure we're accounting for that here. Okay, so this should create 4 rows, and here we're looping through 4 indexes, and we should be able to set an alternating color in that way. All right, let's see if it works. Build succeeded. There's our watch. Here we go. All right. So there we have our alternating colors. And whoops, looks like we have one too many. But that's okay. So we are alternating here, and that's exactly the effect that we intended. And oh yeah, my calculation was just wrong here. So now if we redo it, we should only have 4 rows, because of course it is 0-based indexed. Okay, here we go. Cool, and there we go. So you can see it's quite easy. And of course there's different ways that I could have achieved this, but this is arguably the simplest way, just switching a variable from true to false to switch between 2 different colors. Just in case you'd like to see this done a different way, we can just use kind of a modulo check. So let me get rid of this code down here. Instead of keeping track of a variable, you know, an alternate way we could do it would be to say, okay, so if the index %2 equals 0, in other words, if the index divided by 2 has no remainder, so if it's an even number, we will basically say second table row dot my group dot set background color, and then we can kind of shift between the 2 different colors. So color switch color switch, position 0. Else, we will just say second table row dot my group dot set background color, color switch, position 1. Right. And again, neither is necessarily correct. They're just different ways of achieving the same thing. And so let's test this out. Let's see what this looks like. This should have the exact same effect with, you know what, a little bit fewer lines of code. And there we go. Load that up. Okay. And let's check it out. Yeah, so you can see it's the same effect. So it goes from gray to dark gray, and that's the exact effect we wanted. Now, while we're at it, you know what? Let's improve how we can kind of set these things. So like we did up above where we can just say dot label text equals whatever, let's do the same thing for our group because it's kind of tedious to have to say dot my group dot set background color every time. So we'll go to our code here and let's see, we'll go here, we'll go into our class code. Okay, so we can basically add an observer here. So over here we can say var, let's just call it background. And it's going to be a UI color. And let's initialize it here just in case. UI color dot, I don't know, gray. And we'll do one of these. And we'll say will set. And we'll give it kind of an argument here, color. And we'll say self dot my group dot set background color. And the color will be a color that we pass in, like so. Okay, yeah, our spacing is a little weird there, but you know what, that's okay. Great, and then now over here, we can just say second table row dot background equals color switch position 0. Right, so kind of saving us time and arguably, but maybe a little bit more clear in our intent as to what we're doing. Color switch 1. All right. And where did my code go? Okay, I think I went to the bottom. Yeah. Okay. Now this should work similar to as what we're doing up here, and just kind of keeps our class kind of more distinct, more compact, more discrete, you might say. Okay, and that's going to load up here. All right, we have alternating colors. What else we can do with our UI colors. So what I want to do is to be able to show our rows and have a color kind of getting either darker or lighter as the rows are generated. So to do that, we have to have some basic understanding of how UI color works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a different method of setting the background color. And I'm going to use a UI color, but I'm just going to explicitly declare the CG float values. So these just takes red, green, blue values plus alpha channel. So for example, if I want red 1.0, blue 0.0, and let's see, green, I forgot, green to be 0.0, and don't forget the comma there, right there, and with an alpha channel of 1.0. So what do you think this will look like? Well, it's going to be fully red because red is set to 1.0 and green and blue are 0. And alpha just means that it's fully opaque, so not transparent. Okay, so let's just test that to see what it looks like. And then since these values, they're just CG floats that we can manipulate using a variable, right? So we can put in a variable that's a CG float, and we can do something like every time we loop through, we can maybe increment that variable. So let's take a look. Yeah, so right, so these, because we have our index %2, that's why every other one is using our CG float value. And that kind of gives us a hint as to how we can do something like having every row be a slightly different color. So just to see what this looks like, I'm just going to try 0.2 as the red here. And that's going to be probably a pretty light color red. And then in the meantime, let's think about how to do this. So what I want to do basically is I'm going to put this logic into a function. And every time we invoke the function, it's going to increment a color variable that we can then use. Yeah, so it's kind of a very subtle red. So let's go ahead and let's create a function here. So let's call it func color incrementer. Now let's just call it color setter. Color setter, and it's going to take in, let's see, an index, which will be an integer, and it's going to return a UI color. Okay, so let's figure out our logic here. So first of all, let's declare a variable to keep track of our red value. So, you know what, while we're at it, I'm going to get rid of this colors constant because we're not using it. And we will say let red value will be a type of CG float because that's what the UI color takes in terms of the numbers there. CG float, and we will kind of default this to 0.2 because I know what that looks like now. So this is 0.2 red. Everything else in terms of color is set to 0. And then we can say, so anytime this function is invoked, we will increment the value. So red value. So you know what, let's not make it a negative value because I don't want it to actually go down when I multiply. I want it to go up. So we'll say red value times equals, let's say 1.2. Okay, so it's going to increment it slightly every time. And then we can say return UI color. We'll say red equal to red value. Green, we'll just hard code it to be 0.0. Blue, same thing. Alpha, we will just go to 1.0. Okay, so this should be incrementing every time we loop through, which means now we can kind of call it here like so. So background equals color setter. Nope, not color switch, color setter. And at index, well, whatever index we're on is what we want to use for the index. Okay. And, I wonder if we even need this argument. You know what, we don't even need this argument for index. So we're not using it. So we'll just call color setter. Yeah, because we're just kind of hard coding the value here. We're not really using the index, so we don't really need that argument in there. I mean, we could use the index to increment. We could take the value of the index and use it as a CG float, for example, but let's skip that for now. And let's just try this out. And you know what? I'm going to get rid of my if-else statement because it's not really that useful for us anymore because we're just kind of looping through every time. So this will get invoked, and it's just going to kind of slowly increase the red value as the rows are generated. Now, let's test it out. Let's make sure it's working. Okay, there we go. And any minute now, it should load up, and we'll be able to see if it's working. All right, pretty neat. And then it just, for some reason, it's black in the last one. Okay, so that's kind of a neat effect. It actually works pretty well when we only have kind of 4 rows because we start off red, it gets darker, darker, and then to black. So pretty subtle at the end there, but kind of nice looking. Now, if we did want to use the index, perhaps, so let's say index will be an integer. Okay, and we'll pass that in here. Will be whatever index we are on. And then we can just say let index equals CG float index. Okay. And we'll get rid of our red value property there. And we'll just kind of loop through the index. Is that what we called it? Index? Yeah, index. So many indexes. You know what? Let's name this something else. Let color index. So we don't get too confused there. Color index. Okay, so initially this will be 0, and then it's going to, of course, increment. Let's see what it looks like. And this way our color setter is a little bit more reusable if we need to, without having a hard-coded variable that we're keeping track of. All right. Load it up. Neat. So, okay, so it just sets it to 1.0, and that's probably the highest red value. So, you know what, we can kind of do something like this. Let color equals color index times 0.2 perhaps. And we'll just try this out. Okay. And as you can see, a lot of this is kind of tinkering around with the RGB values to get them to look how you want. Okay, so there we go. That's kind of a nice effect, kind of the opposite of what we had before, but hey, our function is a little bit more reusable now because we can use it anywhere we need to, right? If we wanted to use it up on our initial table, we could easily do so. But you know what, let's try that out. So let's look at the class code for our first row controller. My row controller, row group. So it looks like we do have a group outlet. So you know what, let's try it out. So let's find where we do that. Okay, so insert rows, so type my row controller, and we can do that here. Row.group, row group dot set background color, and we can invoke the function here. Let's see, color setter index will be whatever index we're on. Okay, I don't see any errors. Let's launch it, and we'll take a peek at what it looks like. If we wanted to, we could also pass in a color argument, and then we could just set that in the function if we wanted to be able to use different colors. But yeah, cool. So kind of neat that we can just reuse that function wherever we need to. And that is how we can set UI colors programmatically. And now since we're setting our color here programmatically, we don't need either of these. So we're not using color switch, we're not using red value. So we can simplify our code up a bit. And you know, I'm going to re-put this the way it was. And let's clean it up. So move this up. That's all okay so far. And you know what, these functions, I'm going to move them because I kind of prefer them to be down below the will activate and did deactivate functions. So in my mind, that just kind of makes more sense. And while I'm developing, I can kind of put them where I want, but then once I get closer to being done, I like to kind of put them down below. So these top functions are kind of the built-in functions, right? And then our functions, I just gonna kind of move them down below.